What is up guys, Sam here, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to redesign the famous Ride the Lightning artwork for the band Metallica! Now I'm well aware that the Ride the Lightning artwork was for the album and not strictly a t-shirt design. However, Metallica actually have a history of redesigning their album covers so they work better on merch, and in some cases they actually completely redesign the artwork, which is what we're going to be doing in this video. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started, this is not official Metallica merchandise and I'm purely doing this for fun and educational purposes. Remember to like and subscribe if you find the video useful, I'd really appreciate it. Let's get started. Okay, so first things first guys, let's import our electric chair. This is from Envato Elements. It's a 3D object, so I was able to twist and turn it and get it at exactly the right angle that I wanted to use. First thing, let's add a gradient map to the chair and clip it to the chair layer by holding Alt and clicking in between the two layers. And now I'm just going to fiddle around with my presets and I'm basically looking for a good black and white gradient map. Using this method to desaturate images is way more powerful than just turning it black and white and then playing around with levels or something. It just looks so much better on certain images and gives you way more control. So definitely play around with that guys if you haven't already. Next up we're going to add a selective color adjustment layer and we're going to use this to try and give the chair a bluish tinge like in the original Metallica artwork. Now selective color takes a hell of a long time to get right because you can literally manipulate every color in an image. So after fiddling around for ages I ended up with this. It's not perfect but it will do. So I'm now just going to blend in selective color a little bit more using the blend modes, and I'm just going to experiment until I see something that I like, and then I'm going to play around with the opacity and drop it a little bit just so it blends in a little bit more. So now let's add in the Metallica logo. Pastor of Muppets is the font that you can use to recreate the Metallica logo. And if you open up your glimpse window you can add a horizontally flipped end character just like the logo. I find it's just less messing about doing it that way. If you bring up the text tool and then click on text, you can then use Alt and the arrow keys on your keyboard to adjust the kerning, which is the spacing in between each character. You'll probably notice that I'm quite indecisive about the kerning and I keep changing my mind and going back to it, and that's just because this typeface is only based on the logo and it's not quite the same. So some of the characters are a little bit different in shape. The T for example should be closer to the A at the top, but it's not, so the kerning is a little bit different from the original logo. And being a Metallica fan myself, I know the original logo and I can see that it's not right and it's just bugging me a bit. So I just keep messing about basically. So next up we're going to start building the text effect, and I'm going to start with a gradient overlay and I'm looking for a sort of blue to white to blue again. I'm not trying to match the logo on the original Ride the Lightning artwork, I'm trying to do my own thing and just see what looks cool. The rest of the settings for the gradient overlay are just the normal basic ones, I didn't fiddle around with any blend modes or anything. Next up we're going to go to bevel and emboss and create an inner bevel. And this is what's going to give the text that razor sharp highlighted edge, almost like a razor blade. I then add contour, which boosts the presence of the inner bevel some more, and then back to bevel and emboss just to continue to mess about. I'm still experimenting quite a lot with the text at this point, so just something to be aware of, but I am back and forth between different settings. I experimented quickly with a stroke but wasn't really feeling it. I then added an inner shadow and an inner glow. So now we're going to make the logo 3D. So we need to make a duplicate of our original logo that we've just been messing around with. Name it 3D and turn off all the text effects we just done. Right click and convert it to a smart object and drag it below our original text layer. Now I'm going to go up to filter and open up a Photoshop plugin called iCandy7. The reason I'm using this is because if you didn't hear, Photoshop is actually getting rid of their 3D software. Unfortunately at the moment it's still there, but it's incredibly glitchy and it's not being fixed, so I decided to trial a new plugin called iCandy7. So over on the left hand side we want to make sure that the effect is set to extrude, and then just fiddle about the settings really until we find what we're looking for. The extrusion is basically just how far the 3D effect goes back. We also have a taper, which seems to bend the extrusion towards the center some more. So a great alternative to the 3D software in Photoshop, and actually runs a lot better and a lot quicker. So it's actually much more functional and useful. And as you can see, because this program runs so well, I can keep pulling it up and making micro adjustments and just making sure that my 3D layer is perfect. I'm now going to add a color overlay to the 3D layer so we can match it with the rest of the text. I then actually decide to hop back into iCandy 7 and change the lighting direction so we can see more shadows on the bottom of the 3D extrusion layer, and that means adjusting our color overlay again. So the Metallica logo is popping now, it looks fantastic. However, I decided to go one step further and start creating some of my own shadows using a soft brush. I'm now going to add an outer glow to the 3D layer. This is something that's on the original artwork, however, I thought it would still work really well on this design as well. So now the logo's looking really good, it's made the chair look a bit off, so we're going to have to go back and correct some of the colour of the chair, just so it actually matches the logo a little bit more. So you can see me adjusting some of the blend modes of the gradient map and the selective colour that we made earlier, and also adjusting the opacity just to see if we can bring out a little bit more of that blue. I then added a hue and saturation layer so I can play around with the hue and adjust it slightly. Because the chair's already got that bluish hue, this will just allow us to make a micro adjustment and make sure that that hue is compatible with the logo. So now we've got some of that boring stuff out of the way, we can have some fun and really bring this artwork to life. I'm going to use some smoke brushes from Envato Elements to create the background. You'll notice that I stamp the clouds in as white, and that's so we can add a colour overlay later on. Doing it this way just means that you're not stuck with one colour and you can make changes whenever you like. Once I've added in enough clouds, I'm going to add a layer mask and then invert that layer mask by pressing Ctrl I. As you can see, the layer mask thumbnail has now gone black, which means it's inverted, and we can use a soft white brush to bring back the clouds that we just stamped. I don't know what it is, but doing it this way always leads to a nicer faded edge for a background. But it's completely optional, you could fade the edges with a normal layer mask if you wanted to. Now we're going to add that colour overlay to the clouds and give it a nice blue tinge like the logo and the chair. To give the clouds some depth, I'm going to create some highlights using a soft white brush with the blend mode soft light. And I'm just going to make a few stamps on the clouds, which just adds a little bit more texture, I feel. Now it's time for the fun bit, and we're actually going to add some lightning to the Ride the Lightning design. So I'm going to flick through my lightning brushes, which are also from Envato Elements, and I'm going to find one that will fit the electrode on the electric chair. I think it's called the electrode anyway, the bit where the lightning comes down into someone's head. Although we should probably call it electric and not lightning, I suppose. Once I've found the right lightning, we're going to apply a layer mask to it. And then very simply, we're going to make it look like the lightning is coming straight out of the electrodes and sitting in between that bit of metal that would be on someone's head. So we need to remove any parts of the lightning that are on the outside of the metal, and we can do that with a hard black brush. I also use the warp tool to warp the lightning slightly so it fits a little bit nicer. If you didn't notice, just to make it easier, I turned off the effects on the chair just so I could see the white of the lightning a little bit easier. Now we can add the main bolts of lightning coming down from the logo, and this is going to be the exact same process as the other lightning. We're going to find a bolt that we like, and then we're going to use a layer mask to get rid of any parts we don't want, and then we're going to warp it just so it fits the design better. I actually want the lightning to hit both parts of the chair where the hands would be. I thought that would be a pretty cool idea, so that's why I'm warping the lightning so it kind of looks a little bit more natural as it hits them places. To create the impact of the lightning hitting the chair, I'm going to use a soft round brush and I'm going to stamp it at the end of the lightning, and that's going to kind of create a white flash. Ignore that I've used the blend mode screen, that doesn't actually do anything, you can use normal blend mode. I was just having a moment, I think. And then to make it look even more like an impact, I'm going to add some sparks around the flash, and I'm going to use spark brushes from Envato Elements. And these are really what make the design, I think. They really add that energy of the lightning coming down and smashing the chair. Now I'm going to add another lightning bolt and just repeat the steps we've just done. So now everything is almost in place, but I decide that the chair isn't still quite right, so I add a levels adjustment so I can play around with the contrast a little bit more. I also play around with the hue again. I don't know, something just seems a little bit off to me. I ended up selecting colorize on the hue saturation layer, and that seemed to help blend the chair in with the rest of the artwork. You'll be pleased to know that after that I was finally happy with the chair. Now I'm adding Ride the Lightning down the bottom using the font Violence. This font is also from Envato Elements. Last but not least, I decided to change the effect on the Metallica logo by adding a texture and just making it look generally rougher. So what I'm going to do is clip the texture to the text, which means you won't be able to see it unless we turn off the gradient overlay like this. But we want both to come through, so we need to change the blend mode to soft light in the gradient overlay, which will allow us to see the texture. We also want to change the texture blend mode to pin light and then edit the opacity till we find a nice balance. I'm also going to duplicate the texture and add it to the 3D layer as well, and then change the perspective to match the 3D layer as much as possible so it looks a little bit more realistic. After that we are finally done, guys, and all that's left to do is see how this looks on a t-shirt. Thank you so much, guys, for checking out the video. I really appreciate it. Remember to like and subscribe if you found the video useful, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.